and welcome into another edition of Snakes Territory. I'm your host, Jesse Friedman, and that's Jack Sommers, and we are back with another episode after the Diamondbacks managed to win a baseball game, Jack. According to the Twitterverse, people weren't sure if it was ever going to happen again, but they managed to snap a 4-game skid on Sunday with an all-around pretty impressive 6-4 win over the Atlanta Braves. Jack, your thoughts on the Diamondbacks managing to end what was a pretty brutal losing streak all the way around?
I was starting to wonder myself, so I'm human as everybody else. I think that a lot of things went into this losing streak, so many extra games, and just a lot of 50-50 balls going against them, too. Obviously, the bullpen didn't perform well. Today, they had a 50-50 ball or two go their way, and that always helps as well. But overall, they got a good performance from the team, and it was a good salvage game.
Jack, this game felt like it was trending toward what we've seen quite a bit recently, where the Diamondbacks do find their way out in front, and then we get into the later innings, and with all of the turmoil that has occurred in their bullpen in recent days, you just kind of never know what's going to happen in the last few innings of a game. But they managed to put out the fire enough in this game in order to come away with a win. Ryan Thompson bounced back from a really rough day in the second game of this series. He threw a scoreless 8th inning. Shelby Miller wasn't perfect, but he was able to help work out of that 7th inning after Brandon Pfaadt started the frame. And then Justin Martinez did give up a run in the 9th. We'll circle back to him a little bit later in the show. But to me, Jack, there were a number of big moments in this game, but one of the biggest, maybe the biggest, was Josh Naylor hitting a big 2-run double in the 8th inning that allowed the Diamondbacks to get those 2 runs back pretty much immediately, right? There were 2 runs scored by the Braves in that top half of the 7th inning, and then they immediately were able to respond, which is something that we haven't seen from this offense in recent days.
That was the key, really. I mean, to give the bullpen a little bit of a breathing room. Remember last year, we kept joking that, well, Ketel Marte is a closer because he kept adding runs in the 8th and 9th inning and giving the bullpen some room to maneuver. And certainly that came into play today because it was a 4-3 game. And had they not scored, those 2 runs to get up to 6-3, it could have been a factor, right? Because the 4th run did score for the Braves. So the tack-on runs late were really important. That was Josh Naylor had a great day. He had 3 hits, but none bigger than that one. That ball is what I was talking about when I said the 50-50 ball, because it dropped right in between Verdugo and Harris. And it looked like Verdugo was going to get it, and he pulled up at the last second, and he kind of went down, and put his head down thinking, oh, man, I blew that one. That ball maybe should have been caught, but it went for a double. It landed in the gap. And the D-backs needed that break. I mean, there's just been so many balls like that have gone against them down the lines, in the gaps, and so it's their turn to get one to go their way.
Jack, I'll be the first one to criticize wins as a stat. I think it can be very misleading in a lot of ways, but I will say there's something to be said for the fact that Brandon Pfaadt is currently 5-1. He has gotten a decision in all 6 of his starts, and the Diamondbacks have won 5 of those 6 games. And he's done it not only by being successful from a run prevention standpoint. He has a 2.78 ERA after the outing on Sunday, but also he has pitched deep into games time and time again. I know he was not able to get an out in the 7th inning of the finale of this Braves series, but he still was able to complete 6, which is something he's done, I believe, in 4 of his 6 outings, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been really impressive from that standpoint, and certainly the Diamondbacks' most steady starting pitcher so far this year.
The big thing today, and he talked about that, was he was able to avoid the slug. I mean, Verdugo got him for 3 hits, and the bottom of the order got him for some base hits. But, he kept the ball in the yard, didn't give up the big home run, and that he gave up 9 hits, but it was mostly, a lot of base hits and singles, and it wasn't a ton of super hard contact. So that was the bottom line. Like, he was able to avoid the barrel. And when he can do that, along with being such a good strike thrower, then he's going to get through it. I mean, he had the leadoff hitter on in 4 of the first 6 innings, and he
Yeah.
pitched around those. But it didn't really feel like, oh, the dam is about to break. And really, I mean, he should have had the leadoff hitter out in the top of the 7th, but unfortunately, a backhand attempt by Gino did not work out so well, and the ball got through him for an E5, which wasn't great. Following up some of the other things that he did this weekend, sure would have liked to see him come up with that ball and let Pfaadt get a little deeper and make those, take away some of the drama there. I mean, that definitely set up a rough inning there for the 7th, but they got through it, like you said, and onward and upward.
I also think we should mention quickly that Corbin Carroll made a really important play at the beginning of this game. The first 2 Atlanta Braves reached. It was, I believe, a single and then a double. Second and third, nobody out. And Corbin Carroll was able to throw a man out at home in the first inning and keep the Braves off the board. Certainly, Jack, not something that we've seen from Corbin a ton the last few years. He's been, by and large, very, very good at baseball early in his career, but his arm has not been there for him. Definitely not an asset in his game. We've seen that really come alive this season. He made a really, really good throw. The Braves challenged the play. It was very close, but the call stood. There was not enough evidence to overturn. So really nice play there by Corbin and a good all-around win for the Diamondbacks on Sunday. The Diamondbacks didn't win on Saturday, Jack, but I do think we should talk quickly about that game as well, because it was one of the wildest baseball games that I have ever seen for a number of reasons. One of them, of course, the biggest one being that the Diamondbacks lost a baseball game in which one of their players hit 4 home runs. Eugenio Suárez hit not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 home runs in the game on Saturday, becoming the first MLB player to do so since JD Martinez back in 2017, who of course also did it as a member of the Diamondbacks. Jack, I know you were there in person. That must have been a sight to behold.
It was stunning. I mean, I had an article in draft just in case he did it after he hit the 3rd homer, that so I could get it out. And
That's
I was
impressive. That
still
was you being like ready to go and thinking to be prepared in case he hit a 4th home run. Yeah, that's some serious readiness on your part, Jack. Way to go.
well. I mean, he looked locked in, so I figured I better get on board. But it was still stunning. I mean, like it was just a laser. The last one was a laser shot, just 383 feet just over the wall, but on a line, and it was just such a good feeling to see him do it. It was obviously great to see the team tie it up. Unfortunately, it didn't stand, but for Gino Suárez to have this moment and to have this accomplishment, there's few people in the game that you could feel better for than this guy. Um,
Yeah.
some people may wonder the good vibes only thing and, his outward demeanor, is it real? And I can just say, and I know you can say the same thing, it absolutely is. I mean, the guy, no matter how he's going, and Merrill said this perfectly, actually. He said, whatever they're throwing at him, he could be hitting everything that they're throwing at him or nothing that they're throwing at him. And he's the same guy every day. And that guy is effervescent, smiling, comes up to you, says hello, gives you a pat on the back, asks you how you're doing. He's just that guy. And of course, he's beloved by the teammates and everywhere he goes. So seeing him do that and then coming into the interview room for the post-game presser, some nice eye contact when we were talking, and I got a little choked up actually listening to him. I'll admit it. There's no crying in baseball, and I held it together. But it was an emotional moment. Not as a fan, but as a person, just to see such good things happen to such a good dude. So anyway, that's my take on Eugenio Suárez making history. Oh, the other thing I'll throw in there is Torey Lovullo is the only manager to manage 2 such 4-homer games.
Yeah. That JD Martinez game, that was a sight to behold as well. And hitting 4 home runs in a game is extremely difficult to do and extremely uncommon. It is less common than throwing a perfect game. I believe there have been 24 perfect games all time, and that was Gino became the 19th player in MLB history to hit 4 home runs. So Really, really incredible all the way around. Unfortunately for Gino and the Diamondbacks, he also became the first player in MLB history to homer in 4 consecutive at-bats, but still lose the game. The Diamondbacks somehow did not win this game on Saturday, Jack. They had a 6-2 lead going into the later innings. The bullpen gave up 5 runs in the 7th and 8th, and they fell behind 7-6. And then Gino hit his 4th home run in the 9th to tie the game, send it to extra innings. And then Justin Martinez entered the game in the 10th and was ultimately charged with the loss. But the winning run for the Atlanta Braves scored on a wild pitch. It was about as brutal of a brutal loss as you can drop, which I feel like I've used that word a lot this week, but it really feels appropriate given the way that the Diamondbacks have lost some of these games. But yeah, that's just kind of has been par for the course over the last week, right? The Diamondbacks, do some extraordinary things here and there, and yet you look up at the end of the day and they're losing a game that really felt winnable.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about the bullpen, but that's been the issue for the team. I mean, things were going great up until, April 17th, and then not so much the last 10, 11 days. So, that's a big problem. There's a big issue here. We've been talking about the bullpen a lot. We'll have more to say on that in just a moment. But, it's rough. I mean, there's nothing more demoralizing than late inning losses with the bullpen. So, hopefully they can get over the hump here and figure it out and work past some of the issues that cropped up today as well.
Well, speaking of issues that propped up today, we're going to talk a little Justin Martinez because that velocity was much lower than we're used to seeing. We'll get into that here on the other side of this break. But first, a few words from the guys over at Foul Territory.
If you want a razor that looks good, makes you look good, gets the shave done, and doesn't cost much,
Oh.
Is it nice?
That's a hairy John. And you can smell it too. Smell it, John. Smell it.
Oh, wow. What is
After
that?
See,
shave?
that's Harry's. That's the shave gel.
You
I'm telling you, look, I mean,
look, you look scary, man.
it's the shot.
Fresh.
Now, come in, get this.
I don't want to touch this head anymore. Oh, my God.
Soft it is.
That looks
Doesn't-
like
it is
German
soft.
engineered blades made in
It
their
is
own
soft.
factory that stay sharp longer.
I'm using the razor, and it does not. You can start to feel when
Yeah,
Yeah.
it gets dull. I mean, you guys only do like here and like up here.
true.
I'm doing acreage. Get the edge on your shave with Harry's. Normally their trial set is $10, but right now you can get it for just $6 at harrys.com/foul. That's our exclusive link, harrys.com/foul for a $6 trial set.
So, Jack, the Diamondbacks win the game on Sunday. And once again, it was a little precarious at the end of the game, but Justin Martinez was ultimately able to close the door. At the same time, Justin Martinez's velocity was, at least as far as I can remember, we've never seen it as low as it was in this game. His sinker averaged 97 miles an hour, down 3 ticks from his season average of 100. His four-seamer, 97.2, down from 100.9. His slider, I think there might be a misidentified pitch or two in here. We'll see if there are any adjustments made, but they have on Baseball Savant 86.3, down from 91.9, which is a drop of over 5 miles an hour. This was a talking point after the game, Jack. I know you were there, and from what I've heard, it sounds like Torey Lovullo acknowledged there was some level of concern with Justin Martinez.
Yeah, I have a lengthy article up on our website, Arizona Diamondbacks on SI, and it contains basically all the quotes and everything that Torey had to say about this whole situation. It was almost a little bit strange to hear him so readily acknowledge, yeah, I was looking at the same numbers you were, and I was concerned. He almost never talks like that. It's always, something that kind of mitigates or, he's optimistic or whatever. And he just flat out said, yeah, I saw the same numbers and it was concerning. Of course, he went on to say that, he's saying that he's fine and they're going to make sure that they protect the athlete and so forth. But at the end of all of his comments, he circled back and said, I saw the numbers. They're alarming. The other thing was, and I kind of brought this up in my article as well, as you know, usually we get Torey first, and then we head down to the clubhouse and speak to the players. And
Right.
today, the communications department pops in and says, hey, clubhouse first, come on back for Torey later. So he told me that this topic was exactly what they were talking about in his office. So that was the level of concern. And that's why he was late to his post-game presser, because he was sitting down with his coaches and trainers and trying to figure out what happened there and what to do about it. Now, rather regretfully, I did not ask him if what to do about it included, are you going to finally send him to go get an MRI? Is he going to finally go get imaging? And I wish I had. Honestly, that was a mistake on my part not to get that question in. And we may hear over the next couple of days that he did have an MRI. I don't know what else they would have been talking about so long because it was 10 or 15 minutes. So, they didn't need 10 or 15 minutes to say, yeah, the velocity was down 4 miles an hour. They had to be talking about something else. So what would that have been? What did that look like? I can only speculate whether or not they were actually going to send him for imaging. But, ultimately he did kind of downplay it and said that he thinks he's going to be fine and he thinks that he can function with a lower velocity and all that. But none of this is ideal. I mean, in the context of what's going on with the AJ Puck situation, which again today, it basically, I think it was Friday night or Saturday morning, Torey just said, look, all these different doctors, they have a lot of different patients. They got 30 teams all coming at them, and there's a stack of paper of images and radiology reports to look at. And so it takes time to get through them all. So that was the explanation we got as the weekend approached as to why we didn't have an answer on AJ Puck. But it's fairly clear that AJ Puck is going to be out a while. In a best case scenario, he's still going to be missing some significant time, even if he avoids surgery. So to have Justin Martinez suddenly, have issues at the same time, he had this whole fatigue issue, dead arm issue. Torey used the term dead arm several times. And one thing I kind of want to emphasize here, I know I'm going on a little long, but this whole thing migrated from fatigue to body fatigue to arm fatigue to shoulder fatigue. And then when we spoke to Justin directly, he used the term shoulder stiffness and was having a hard time getting loose. And, I mentioned that to Torey again. And, and that's what Justin told us. And Torey said, well, he's really, it's really fatigue and it's probably dead arm. He used the phrase dead arm like twice today and tried to emphasize that maybe Justin doesn't really know how to express it, how he's feeling. And it's fair to note that prior to this year, we never spoke to Justin without a translator. His English has gotten much, much better. And this is the first year that we've interviewed with him without a translator. But we have to definitely give allowance for the fact that English is not his first language and he's still learning it.
So just to add some context here, I know people probably know this, but just so we're all on the same page, Martinez pitched against the Miami Marlins in Miami on April 16th and April 17th. So that's, 10, 11 days ago at this point. And then that's when we got word about the fatigue shortly after that, right? He wasn't available as you would have expected in that weekend Cubs series. And then he didn't pitch again until the 23rd of April. So that would have been on Tuesday of this, or I guess on Wednesday of this past week. So he pitched on Wednesday, and then he didn't pitch on Thursday, and he came back, or on Friday, and then he came back and pitched on Saturday and again on Sunday. So this was a back-to-back for for Justin Martinez, not JD Martinez. This is a back-to-back for Justin Martinez after having only pitched once in the previous 9 days before that, right? So you could maybe make a case of maybe just going from not pitching for that long to suddenly doing a back-to-back where he did throw 26 pitches in the game today, granted, his velocity was down from the beginning of the outing. It's not like it was normal and then it suddenly was 94, 95 at the end. It was down the entire way. But you could maybe make some sort of a case there, Jack. But at the same time, this is a pretty alarming velocity drop. And even watching Martinez pitch, he didn't look comfortable. His command was spotty, which I know is something we've seen from him before, but he looked less sharp than we've even seen in recent days. And if I'm the Diamondbacks, Jack, I don't know if I see any downside to getting an MRI. Like, he's a really important part of this team, especially now that you're kind of expecting AJ Puk to miss significant time. If I'm the Diamondbacks, I'm probably using the off day tomorrow or the off day today, depending on when people are listening to this. I'm probably using the off day to get Justin Martinez an MRI and just do your due diligence. Just double check. I know that they have far more information on this than I do, and they know a whole lot more about Justin Martinez's arm than I do. But logically, that just makes sense to me.
One thought crossed my mind. They just extended him 5 years, $18 million, right, with all sorts of back-end options. It seems likely that before they would have inked that deal, they would have got him in the tube.
That's a good point.
Right. So they may not be anxious to stick him back in the tube right after that. I mean, getting repeated MRIs maybe is not the most advisable thing if you can avoid it.
Right.
So that may have been a factor. Again, I'm speculating. I don't know this, but it's fairly common that when you're going to extend a guy, you do some imaging and make sure everything's okay before you ink that deal. And so maybe he just recently had one.
Yeah, it's a good call. So we'll see. I know you and I will definitely be looking very closely at what the guys out in New York report over the course of that series. We're probably going to get some news on AJ Puk sometime soon, I would expect. It's been a while now that we haven't really known his status. So yeah, some interesting storylines there to keep an eye on for sure. Justin Martinez is so important for this team, and they need him, right? I mean, they can't have a version of Justin Martinez where he's limited on back-to-backs, or, he can only pitch 2-3 times a week or whatever it is. Like, this is a guy that you really need to get right. So we'll continue to monitor that and see where things go from there. This, however, is intended to be a mailbag episode. Somehow, Jack, we've already killed 20 minutes because there's a lot to get to over the course of the weekend. But we are going to spend the rest of this episode answering your questions. We very much appreciate all of you who chimed in very quickly. We unfortunately will not be able to get to everyone's questions. So if we don't get to yours, we apologize, but we'll be doing many more of these in the future. So hopefully we can get around to everyone at some point. And Jack, here's the first one. This is from Justin McDearmont. He said, with Ketel Marte possibly coming back on the road trip and Garrett Hampson's notable absence from the lineup in recent days, do you think Tim Tawa stays up as a utility man? And just to add some context here, I know that from being at the ballpark the past few days, you were among those to report that Ketel Marte, it appears, is going to be available for the Diamondbacks for the Phillies series, but not the Mets series. It's not official yet, but Torey Lovullo kind of alluded to that maybe being the case. So this is a decision that is looming for the Diamondbacks pretty soon. Ketel Marte, pretty good chance he's coming back here in a few days, and the Diamondbacks are going to have to decide what to do. And it seems pretty clear. It comes down to either Garrett Hampson, who, as Justin points out, has not played a whole lot lately, or to Tim Tawa, a guy who has played a lot and has hit really well, has taken some strides forward defensively after he was a little bit shaky out of the gate. Jack, this is a tough decision. What do you think the Diamondbacks are going to do here?
Well, first of all, I also saw Ketel in the locker room today, and he said, "Yeah, no New York, but Philly. I'm going to play in Philly." Okay. And he was all happy about hitting 6 homers in the extended spring training. So I went back and I asked Torey. So I said, "Hey, Ketel said he's going to play in Philly," and he's like, "I'm not confirming that, but it's just because it's not official, and it involves roster moves and stuff like that." But
Right.
Ketel's almost certainly, barring a setback, nothing bad happens over the next few days. Ketel almost certainly is going to play in the Philly series. So, hopefully Garrett Stubbs isn't around, but that's another issue. Right now, the issue is very simple. Tim Tawa has not played shortstop. So, he's got 2 professional games of shortstop under his belt, and I think they came a couple years ago. They did not have him play any shortstop during spring training. And going by their past actions and going by what they've said, they won't ask a player to do something that they haven't asked him to do before in major league games. So if they should bring Ketel back and keep Tawa on the roster and DFA Hampson, then they do not have a backup shortstop. And that's just not a situation that they're going to do. So it's kind of a process of elimination here. My guess is that it's going to be Tim Tawa has to go back down.
And I'm sure the Twitterverse will absolutely love that when it happens, if it does. I think that's pretty fair. Like, the Diamondbacks are going to want somebody on their roster that they feel comfortable playing shortstop, and Tim Tawa is just not going to be that guy. Not to say that he couldn't play shortstop. I think he's looked good enough at second base. He's shown enough range at second base that I think maybe that's something that they push for him to do in the future, but he just doesn't really have a ton of experience professionally doing that as of right now. And that kind of leads us into this follow-up question from our guy Chris in Phoenix. He says, to follow up, currently Hampson is the only backup shortstop on the roster. Tawa is not a shortstop. If Tawa is kept over Hampson, would that mean Ketel is the backup shortstop? And how long do you think the D-backs would stay with that construct, if at all? And Jack, I guess we kind of said our answer here. Like, I would be pretty surprised if the Diamondbacks went with that construct at all. Ketel Marte, especially coming off the hamstring injury, like, we're expecting him already to have sort of a return to play program. If Geraldo Perdomo gets hurt, which God forbid, you don't want that to happen, but it's something that the team has to have a plan in place for. If it does, you can't put Ketel Marte fresh off his hamstring injury at shortstop. Like, I just can't imagine the Diamondbacks doing that.
Yeah, I would. It's certainly not part of the plan. That much I know for certain. Is there a scenario where Ketel could end up playing a couple innings late in the game under some emergency situation? Sure, that could happen. But that would be it. It would just be that type of off the wall, no way to plan for it type scenario before Ketel takes even one step on the other side of second base. It's just not going to happen. When he comes back, he's going to DH against left-hand pitchers, probably play second base against right-hand pitchers, and take a couple of days off within 6. I think I was saying earlier, if I had to guess what that's going to look like, probably like through the first 6 games that he's back, I'd look for him to play like 4 of them, a couple at DH, a couple at second base, and a couple of days off in between. That's probably roughly about what it's going to look like. So no, there's no universe where the team is planning on using Ketel Marte as the designated backup shortstop to Geraldo Perdomo.
I think we're pretty much on the same page there. I guess the other sort of crazy thing the Diamondbacks could do, Jack, is this would be crazy. Designate Garrett Hampson for assignment, send down Tim Tawa, and call up Jordan Lawlar in addition to bringing Ketel Marte off the injured list. From a roster standpoint, that could work, and it would fix your issue of not having a backup shortstop on the roster. Certainly, that's something Jordan Lawlar could do. And we are going to talk some Jordan Lawlar now. That sort of leads us into Tim's question here. Will Lawlar come up if there isn't an injury to Ketel, Perdomo, or Gino outside of a potential postseason addition? And then Tim also asked, what is the date in that if the D-backs do call him up and he is on the 26-man through the rest of the season, it won't burn his first year of service time. So I guess we'll start with maybe just the first part of the question before we get into the kind of complicated service time dynamics. will Jordan Lawlar come up, Jack, if there isn't an injury? Because as of right now, it kind of feels like the only path that Lawlar has to making the team is through somebody else getting hurt.
Yes, the only thing is that it did start to look again like we were starting to have that conversation again about whether Lawlar could or should come up to play third base over Eugenio Suárez.
And then he
Prior
hit
to
4
the
home
4-homer
runs.
game, well, even prior to that, I think he was on a 4-game hitting streak. The night before, he had a couple of walks. You could smell it coming.
Yeah.
Something was brewing with him. And then he hit the 4 homers in the game. So, I mean, it's not going to happen. Not in the near future, as far as a performance-based, non-injury performance-based situation. So could Lawlar be called up in that circumstance where nobody's hurt? Yes, he could be. I'm not ruling that out whatsoever. I think that it's more about how he looks to the team beyond the OPS and batting average, the quality of his bats, what's his contact rate? Is he still striking out a lot, or has he cut down on those? How does he look at the various defensive positions? If all of those boxes are checked off and they feel like he's at least gotten to, enough of a playing time threshold where they feel like, okay, the development is there, possibly. But I don't think they're there yet on a non-injury situation.
I guess part of it depends on, is he able to maintain his current level of performance for a little bit longer? Like Jordan Lawlar still doesn't have that many plate appearances in AAA in his career, right? He got very few of them last year. He got just a few toward the end of 2023 before they called him up to the majors. So this still isn't a very big sample size in AAA. And it's not to say that I'm super skeptical of what he's doing necessarily. Like I think I haven't dove a ton into the underlying numbers with Lawlar, but it's pretty good. It's not, it's not all smoke and mirrors right now from him. Maybe it's not quite.
Jesse,
yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt you. The PCL pitching is so bad. It's just so bad. Those numbers, I mean, you take 200, 300 points off of everybody's OPS. I'm just telling you.
I feel like that's generally the case in the PCL, right? It's not just the quality of the pitching, it's just the run environment where the ball just tends to fly like crazy at a lot of those places. So yeah, I still think that the Diamondbacks are trying to call up Jordan Lawlar at a time where they feel like he has opportunity, and they also feel like he is going to stay. That is really their primary focus here. So given how well he's playing lately, maybe you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, he's shown us enough to where we think this guy's ready. But then the other side of the equation is, where is he going to play? Eugenio Suárez, his bats have not looked very good for a good chunk of the season. His defense certainly has not looked very good. I think he was at -6 outs above average at third base entering play on Sunday. But he's also on pace now for over 60 home runs, which I know it's a little early to be talking about on base numbers, but hitting 10 home runs in a month is pretty rare. That is not a type of player that you're looking to replace or take at bats away from anytime soon. You know what Geraldo Perdomo is at shortstop. We're going to answer another question later about all-star candidates on the Diamondbacks, and Perdomo is on that list right now. You're not replacing at bats there. And then once Ketel Marte is healthy, maybe there's a window here where Ketel is going to be on kind of a return to play program. There's some opportunity at second base, but you figure once you get to a few weeks removed from that injury, Ketel's probably playing most of his games at second base, and there isn't a ton of opportunity there. So with this question, Jack, I kind of go back to how these situations tend to work themselves out. How you kind of feel like if Lawlar does this for another month or so, like some, things change often in this game, and maybe an opportunity will open up. But right now, I just don't really see the path here.
Yeah, I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse. One thing I want to say is I am absolutely certain that the team is far less impressed by batting average, OBP, slugging percentages in Reno than we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm certain of that. So, I don't know that it's as close to them for them as it seems like to us because of the things that they look at. So, I guess we should kind of move on to the service time portion of the question.
Sure.
And look, I don't think that they're manipulating service time, but just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out there, right? So Tim asked a legitimate question. We've got to give a legitimate answer here. Is service time a factor in their decision making? Who can say? I don't think it is, but I can't rule it out either. I don't have enough information to say, no, that's definitely not the case. So that being said, I reached out to Michael McDermott, one of my writers over at our website and one of the smartest people anybody knows, and certainly a math whiz. And so Lawlar has 25 days of service time. You need to reach 172 to be considered to have had a full season in the majors. There's either 183 or 186. We're about 30 days into the season. Michael estimated that if he was called up on May 4th or before and stayed on the roster for the rest of the season, that he would qualify as having a full season. And so he thinks it's May 5th is the date, the earliest that they would be able to bring him up without having the risk of him qualifying as having a full season. So Michael also added about the Super 2 situation, because there is a category of arbitration eligible players called Super 2s, and if he was called up before June 20th, he probably would qualify as a Super 2, maybe as late as July 1. And that can come into play because that gives you an extra year of arbitration. So you get more expensive in the arbitration process before you reach free agency. So those are the dates for the folks out there that are concerned about service time manipulation and whether or not that's a factor in this. I don't believe it is. I'll say that again. But May 5th, thereabouts is the date you're looking at. And that's an estimate. That is not official.
Yeah, we have to attach that disclaimer just so nobody sues us or anything like that. So while you were explaining that, I looked up Jordan Lawlar's underlying numbers over on Baseball Savant, and I'm not gonna lie, Jack, what I'm seeing is kind of changing my perspective on his situation a little bit. Jordan Lawlar, this was entering Sunday, so these numbers are going to be slightly old, but a 374 batting average, a 692 slugging percentage. But you look at the underlying numbers, a 261 expected batting average, a 430 expected slugging percentage. Those are pretty massive gaps. Those are pretty hard to ignore. If you look at xWOBA, which is sort of like an all-encompassing stat that reads like an on-base percentage. You can kind of think of that scale in your head. And because this is xWOBA instead of WOBA, it takes into account launch angles, exit velocities, those kinds of things instead of the actual results on the field. So it's a pretty useful stat. Jordan Lawlar at this point, Jack, ranks 6th on his own team in xWOBA. On the Reno Aces, there are 5 players ahead of him. Granted, some of these players have not had all that many plate appearances this year. Jake McCarthy is number 1 on the list. He certainly hasn't been there for very long. He's up at 467. Tim Tawa, before getting called up, also a small sample, he was at 428. Aramis Garcia at 417. Blaze Alexander, 377. Ildemaro Vargas, 362. And then it's Jordan Lawlar at 358. And if you think of, again, this is on a on-base percentage scale, a 358 on-base percentage is good, but you wouldn't really consider it elite or all that exceptional, right? So I'm not trying to totally invalidate what Lawlar has done. Certainly his speed is going to make it so he's generally going to get more out of his batted balls than most players out there because he's so fast. But these numbers, I guess maybe they lie a little bit, Jack, but this is pretty telling for me.
Yeah. The other two things that if I was mucking around on Savant right now, I would probably be looking up his chase rate and his in-zone contact rate.
Yeah.
Those are the two. I mean, for me, that's what I'm most interested in is, how's his plate discipline? Is he chasing balls out of the zone? And how much contact is he making inside the zone? Is there a lot of swing and miss inside the zone, or is he making contact regularly inside the zone? When I looked at these 2 weeks ago, they weren't where you wanted to see them. I believe they would have improved because when I looked at it like 2 weeks ago, his strikeout rate was 34%, and I think it dropped to the mid to high 20s. So probably everything else improved along with it. But those are the numbers that I would be tracking personally, because at the end of the day, I mean, we know he's got pop. We know he can hit the ball over the wall. We know he can drive it into the gap. But can he do it frequently enough? Can he discipline himself not to get out of the zone? And is he making enough contact in the zone? If he's doing those two things, then I'm not worried about his bat.
Right.
And if those numbers aren't where they need to be, then he needs more time.
His I don't have his in zone contact rate, but I did just look up his chase rate real quick, and it is pretty good. It's 22.6%.
Okay.
At least if my quick Savant search just now, if I pressed all the buttons correctly, 22.6 is pretty good. Yeah, league average for chase rate I think is in the mid to upper 20s usually. So so 22.6 would be lower than the league average. So yeah, any other Jordan Lawlar thoughts?
I would say I remember being traumatized by Davison De Los Santos' 42% chase rate.
Right. Yes. Yeah. If your chase rate starts with a 4, then that's when you could be in trouble. Unless you're Salvador Perez, who somehow manages like year in year out to be one of the better hitting catchers in baseball, even though he basically swings at everything. Anyway, those are our thoughts on Jordan Lawlar. That was a good question. Moving on. This is a question from Brady. He said, is there any reasoning behind Torey not having assigned roles coming out of the bullpen? Last time we had assigned roles, it benefited in reaching the World Series. Example, Ginkel 8, Seawald 9. Just seems to be a missed opportunity in attempting to solve the bullpen issues. Jack, I will have you take the first crack at this.
What I'll say is that first of all, it's a really great question. And there's a lot of nuance behind this. And sometimes it's easy to kind of have it get lost in the shuffle, especially the way Torey explains it. It can really confuse people. But the fact is they actually did have designed roles. And it was very specific. Puck and Martinez had the 8th and 9th, and it alternated based on where were the lefties in the order. The lefties in the order came up in the 8th was Puck's. If the lefties in the order came up in the 9th was Puck's. And they could see that coming ahead of time. I mean, we probably tend to look at it an inning ahead, but they're planning this out 2 or 3 innings ahead. And they communicate to the players, and they let them know. If this part of the order comes up, you're going in. If this part of the order comes up, you're going in. And guess what? It was working like a charm. Through the 17th, AJ Puck had 4 saves and 2 holds. A hold is like a save, but it doesn't occur at the end of the game.
Right.
Justin Martinez had 2 saves and 3 holds. Puck had looked a little shakier than normal doing it, but the fact is that he converted. Every time he had the lead, he handed it off, or he closed it out, one or the other. Justin, same thing, had 2 saves, 3 holds, hadn't even allowed a run. So up until April 17th, that was working perfectly. The only issues that they were having in the bullpen prior to and up to April 17th were Joe Manaply was struggling mightily. Ryan Nelson had a rough, long relief role. Ryan Thompson hadn't seen his ERA inflate yet. Bryce Jarvis hadn't imploded yet. And of course, Jalen Beeks and Shelby Miller were lights out. So if you look at, our first show or two, we were talking about how great the bullpen was.
Yeah.
They were doing really well. What happened was AJ Puck woke up on Friday morning, the 18th, couldn't bend his elbow, and he's been out ever since. Justin Martinez woke up with a stiff shoulder and has been out. And the bullpen has been in disarray ever since. Now, Justin Martinez has come back, but we just had a long discussion about his issues with dead arm or shoulder stiffness, loss of velocity. So everybody else, now it's become a fire drill, right? When you lose your top two high leverage guys where everything was clicking and working exactly like it was supposed to, obviously you're going to be in disarray.
Yeah.
And, whatever buttons you push, they're all going to be the self-destruct button at some point.
And I would also add to that the Diamondbacks played, was it 4 extra inning games over the past week, if I'm not mistaken? There was the
Yeah, well, they played all those extra inning games because the bullpen kept blowing leads.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it kind of all goes in a circle, but just to say that when your relievers are being used that much, it's going to make certain guys not available certain days. Lots of situations recently where Torey really wanted to stay away from certain pitchers, but he was willing to go to them in like an absolute must situation. So that's going to kind of make your bullpen roles a little bit cloudier. But I'm with you where I think the Diamondbacks generally have. It's certainly evolved from the beginning of the year. Like, we didn't know that Jalen Beeks was going to be this big a part of the bullpen. The Diamondbacks didn't either. We didn't know Shelby Miller was going to be as effective as he's been. So it's had to evolve a little bit. But I still think the Diamondbacks do have some roles here. It's just been really messy with the injuries and the extra inning games and some of these guys that you didn't expect to be big members of this bullpen really emerging, and some other guys struggling a little bit. So, it's still April. Maybe we give it some time, Jack, and we look back on this question and we're like, when all was said and done, the Diamondbacks actually did have pretty well-defined bullpen roles for most of the season. Things were just a little bit messy early in the year.
Well, also, I think it's important to note that with Puck down, as long as he's available, Martinez is a closer. I mean, they lost the lead, the night before they could get to Justin. And, so they were down 7-6, right? Because of that bad eighth inning. So you have to remember that he would have been in to close had they had a lead.
Right.
And then Gino tied it in the ninth inning with the home run. And then today he came in to close the game. I mean, Justin Martinez is the closer.
Those are your words, not Torey Lovullo's words, because
No, but he is.
Torey still refuses to say that, right?
He can say or not say whatever he wants, but Justin Martinez is his closer as long as he's available and not injured.
Yeah.
As long as with AJ Puck down, Martinez is a closer, and anytime he's available, Torey's going to go to him as a closer. He's not going to play matchups with Shelby Miller and Justin Martinez. He's not doing that.
Right. Yeah, which I think makes perfect sense. All right, next question comes from Jordan Brimley over on X. He said, why do you believe Gurriel continues to get consistent at-bats over Randal Grichuk? This is an interesting one. I think based on the numbers that people have seen so far this season, there is no question that Lourdes Gurriel has had a rough go of things early in the year. And the other thing that I'll add to this before I pass it over to you, Jack, is that in 2024, who is the better hitter against right-handed pitching? It was actually Randal Grichuk. It wasn't a whole lot of plate appearances. I think it was 95, something like that. But if you look at these two guys a season ago, Grichuk's OPS against right-handed pitchers was just over 800, whereas Gurriel's was a little bit under 700. So there is, if you're looking at very recent stats, there is an argument to be made here. However, I think you and I are kind of on the same page that if you look at the larger picture over the past few years, you can kind of understand why the Diamondbacks have been hesitant to make any big changes at that position.
I think the issue of sample size and when to make a change is a really, really tough one for everyone.
Yeah.
We're kind of in the middle, right? We're analysts and we're, pretty close to the game and close to the team, but we understand where most of the fans at home and people that play fantasy baseball are coming from. And look, the reality is this. Fans and fantasy baseball players are going to be more subject to making calls and decisions based on smaller sample sizes than people that are trained analysts, and certainly the teams. That's just the way that is. Bigger sample size matters. How many plate appearances did Lourdes have last year against right-handed pitching? Had to be over 300,
It's a lot. Yeah.
Grichuk only had 95. So what happens when you give Randal Grichuk a lot of plate appearances against right-handed pitching? Let's take a look at this. From 2019 through 2023, 1,681 plate appearances against right-handed pitching. He had a 236 batting average and a 687 OPS. That works out to a 79 WRC plus, or weighted runs created plus. 100 scale equals league average. So in other words, from 2019 through 2023, Randal Grichuk was 21% worse than average when batting against right-handed pitching. And he played a lot. I mean, we're talking about, in the 2020 short season, we're talking hundreds of plate appearances every year. Last year he was
on the Rockies, so they weren't gonna platoon him, right?
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, putting up those numbers in Colorado, most of it was, not in Colorado, just the 1 year. Yeah. 2024, 95 PA, hit 242 batting average, which wasn't much higher. He had the 801 OPS. That was based on 6 home runs. I mean, essentially what happened was he hit 2 or 3 extra homers batting right-handed last year, and it drove his numbers up in a small sample size. Now let's flip over to Lourdes Gurriel Jr. 1,980 plate appearances against right-handed pitching from 2019 through 2024. He hit 272 with a 771 OPS, so almost 40 points higher in batting average, almost 100 points more in OPS, and 109 WRC plus. So he was 9% better than league average versus Grichuk, who was 21% worse than league average. So when you sign a player like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. to a multi-year deal worth over $40 million based on a 3 or 4 year track record of hitting right-handed pitching, and then you sign a player like Randal Grichuk, who's got a long-term track record of killing lefties and not being so good against righties, you're not going to overreact to a few extra homers batting right-handed in 2024 to completely upend. Now, they told him very specifically, you're going to be a platoon player. That's why we're signing you. We're going to have you play against every lefty and seldom versus righties. What I would say here, in 2025, Lourdes has 77 plate appearances, 167 batting average, and it's been feeble and for the most part, pretty ugly.
Yeah.
What I would say is that I would second guess them is Randal Grichuk started April 11th and then didn't start again for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That seems not correct to me. I think that I would certainly advocate for at least a couple of days off, for more days off for Lourdes, and give Randal Grichuk a couple extra starts, if for no other reason than to keep him sharp. Because if you bench that long, then you're not as sharp. But if you're talking about a wholesale line change and you're just benching Lourdes Gurriel in favor of Randal Grichuk, no, there's no justification to do that yet. But a couple of games here and there, yes, I absolutely agree that should have happened before, and give him at least a couple of games.
The other thing I'll add real quick is that Lourdes is a very, very streaky hitter. I know we've talked about this already on the show, but I don't think any of us are going to be, at least I personally am not going to be shocked if we look up at, in mid-May and Lourdes suddenly has a 725 OPS or, just totally reasonable offensive numbers. He's done that quite a bit throughout his career. Will have just a terrible month and then he'll carry the offense for a month. So, I think the reason this has become such a talking point is more about what Gurriel has not been able to do than what Grichuk has proven that he can do against righties. As you mentioned, last year was good, but the sample's so small, people are just looking up at Gurriel and seeing an OPS that's in the low 500s and being like, well, anyone could do better than this, right? But there's a track record here of Gurriel. You just don't know what you're going to get in a certain month. But over the course of his career, every single season that Gurriel has played in the majors, you look up at the end of the season and he's an above average hitter. It's happened every single year of his career. So I don't think after 1 month you're considering significant changes as you well described. Next question that we have here comes.
Sorry, can we just back up 1 sec?
Sure.
Apologize. I do want to contradict myself just slightly.
Okay.
In this scenario, the one thing that we do need to take a look at again is the X stats, the expected stats.
Sure.
And if you look at all of the numbers under the hood, the one thing that is important to emphasize is it's not like he's getting unlucky. So there should be a limit to how much further they go with this before they make it determine, there may be some decline going on here.
You're talking about Gurriel?
Yes. So,
Gurriel, I'm looking at Gurriel's Savant page right now, and I'm not going to say these numbers are amazing, but Gurriel entering play on Sunday, expected batting average 245, expected slug 418. Like, that's not that far away from the hitter that you'd expect.
What's the xWOBA on that?
His xWOBA this season is 289, which is not good, but his WOBA is 221. So there's a really big gap right now between the expected stats and the actual stats. He also isn't striking out really at all. Gurriel's strikeout rate entering Sunday was 11.9%, which is actually exceptional. It's about half the league average strikeout rate. So, I mean, what you're saying about is there some regression here? Like, I think those are all totally valid things, but I'm glad you brought up the underlying stats because they do make a case for Gurriel at least being significantly better than he's been so far.
Better, yes, but 289 is still well below average.
Yeah. His walk rate is 3%.
Average, what, 316 or 317, something like that.
Yeah.
By the way, folks, this is what Jesse and I do in the press box. We bicker back and forth over all these numbers and get a little esoteric, but now you're getting a real look under the hood.
Yeah, hence why we're at 57 minutes and we're still answering questions. So, but hey, it's a good time. If you've made it this far, we appreciate you. All right, let's go ahead and move on. We have 2 questions left real quick. Joel over on X said, when can we start to be worried about Corbin Burnes metrics being a lot lower than usual? First of all, I have to say I appreciate the wording here that it's not when should we be worried, it's when can we be, like as if Jack and I are everyone just really wants to be concerned, but we're like the 2 people holding back all of the disdain among Diamondbacks fans. But yeah, Jack, I'll let you start on this one. Do you think it is time for people to be genuinely concerned about what we're seeing from Corbin Burnes?
I would say I would categorize my concern level as moderate. I have moderate concern. I won't say minimal. I'm past minimal. I won't say I'm extremely concerned, but I do have moderate concern. I mean, we can look at the ERA versus xERA and FIP, and we see a gap there. And so that's one indicator that even the 4 ERA isn't looking all that great right now when you look at the peripheral metrics. His strikeout rate's about the same as last year. The walk rate's higher. The home run rate's higher, hence the higher FIP. But there's 2 things that are really concerning me. The strikes swung at and missed percentage. Through 2023, that was 14.8%. In 2024, it was 12.9%, some decline, but not bad. In 2025, it's 9.3% so far. And then his signature pitch, the cutter, Eno Sarris's stuff plus metric, which measures again on that scale to 100, above average is above 100. 123, 108, 111 the previous 3 seasons. This year, 100. So what we have had so far this year is Corbin Burnes with basically a very average cutter, not a whole lot of swing and miss, and not very good control. Now, the control and command, he could dial that in, but he needs to discover what it is that makes his cutter great again. He struggled with this a little bit last year, but then recovered. So how long is it going to take him to recover again this year? It's somewhat troublesome that it's happening again. You would have hoped that whatever solution he found last year to make his cutter great again would have stuck, and it apparently hasn't. And so as smart as he is, as dedicated as he is, as process-oriented as he is, I'm certainly far, far from giving up, but it's moderate concern to me that he's back in this boat again.
Corbin Burnes for the season, I mean, it's not like we're talking about a pitcher with an ERA of 6, right? He has a 4.05 ERA. He was pretty good his last time out. He looked, as we discussed the other day, he looked like Corbin Burnes for 4 innings. Really everything that you could have hoped for as a Diamondbacks fan. Like, he looked like that guy for 4 innings, and then he just threw like 45 pitches to get 4 outs and kind of looked more like the guy we'd seen in the starts before that afterward. But he's already kind of shown some resilience and the ability to get some outs even without the stuff being dialed in, as you just outlined. I think I'm with you on the concern level being somewhere moderate. I would maybe categorize mine as still kind of on the lower end. But I think there's a distinction between concern for 2025 and concern for the long-term outcome of this contract. Because this is a unique situation where, because the Diamondbacks got a bit of a discount here, there's an opt-out after the second year. And that opt-out is really, built in to give Corbin Burnes an opportunity to go out and get paid again after 2026. If he goes out and has 2 great years with the Diamondbacks, that's probably what's going to happen. But on the other hand, if Corbin Burnes doesn't pitch so well the next 2 years, then the Diamondbacks do genuinely have 6 years, at over $200 million. And to your point, if we're already talking about, a cutter that's around league average, what does it look like 3 years from now? What does it look like 5 years from now? I think you're getting to the point where, just from what I've seen, which again, we're only talking about 5 starts here, but I'm starting to ask more questions than I expected to about the long-term outcome and, what might happen after 2026 if Corbin Burnes continues to pitch this way. For 2025, I could get to a point, Jack, where I am, getting somewhat concerned, but right now the sample is too small. He looked so good in those first 4 innings the other day. I don't know what happened the 2 innings after that, but it seems clear to me that the real Corbin Burnes is still there. He just has not been able to be that guy consistently for whatever reason. I'm still pretty optimistic that he'll turn things around.
Okay, then.
So
I'll ride with Jesse until I can no longer abide.
We have one more question. This is a fun one from J Army Strong AZ over on X. They said, who are our early all-star contenders? Jack, I will simply say that I think Corbin Carroll is probably on that list. I think we can all agree there. Corbin Carroll, if the All-Star game were tomorrow, would all but certainly be in the starting lineup. Granted, there are some very good outfielders. There's some competition there with Kyle Tucker and Fernando Tatis Jr., but you have 3 outfield slots. I think Corbin would be a starter probably pretty easily at this point. But beyond that, it gets interesting. There's Josh Naylor, there's Geraldo Perdomo. What other names are coming to your mind, Jack, or how good of a shot do you think guys like Naylor or Perdomo really have?
Well, I mean, I think that they probably don't have a very good shot at getting voted in, just because the competition that they have is
because Mets fans exist, and Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor play the same positions.
Right. I wouldn't count Gino out. Hey, dude's on pace for 60 homers. I mean, if he gets his average up to 230, 240, and he keeps bopping homers like he has, then, and has that accomplishment of the 4-homer game, that people are going to remember. If he gets up to close to the All-Star break and he's got 24 homers, then if he keeps hitting homers like this, he's going to be a candidate, as long as it's not hitting 185. And then, of course, Ketel Marte is going to have 8 weeks of playing time or more before the All-Star break. And so, 8 weeks of Ketel Marte could end up being very impressive. and with his track record. So he's probably not going to get voted in at this point, but any one of Naylor, Perdomo, Suárez, and Marte could end up on the team. And I think whichever of those is, the two guys out of that four that are having the best season will be candidates for the reserve roles. I guess we could throw Pavin Smith in there, but he's kind of started his regression to the mean a bit lately.
And he's a platoon guy, which is a pretty big obstacle.
Yeah, well, and there's a DH in his way from another team that'll go unmentioned.
Pavin has much better numbers than that DH right now, I'll just say. I know he's only being used in a platoon role. There is one other name that I'll add to this conversation, which feels odd given the conversation we had earlier, but Justin Martinez, if this winds up just being a week and a half sort of blip on the radar and his usage returns to normal and he continues in this role as the Diamondbacks closer, which we expect now that AJ Puck is going to miss time, Justin Martinez's numbers at this point in the year are quite good. Today was the first day that he gave up an earned run. I know he gave up, talking about the finale of the Braves series, and then he did take a loss in the Saturday game of the Braves series. Granted, that was just the wild pitch with the ghost runner. So I think Justin Martinez has become kind of a popular name around the game. People have seen the highlights, the 102 miles an hour. People have seen some of the devastating splitters that he's thrown. It wouldn't shock me if Martinez was in that conversation. He's just going to have to overcome whatever it is that's happening right now.
And I think you also have to throw Brandon Pfaadt in the mix too.
Yeah.
5-1 with a 2.78 ERA. Double that up through the end of May, and a lot of people are going to be talking. If he's 10-2 with a sub-3 ERA by the time we get to the end of May, then he'll be in that discussion as well for potential All-Star game appearance.
That would be pretty crazy, right? If Brandon Pfaadt was in the All-Star game for the Diamondbacks, but Zach Gallen and Corbin Burnes were nowhere to be found. It was a crazy game that we watched, Jack. In order to wrap things up, which, my goodness, we're well over an hour at this point, so we appreciate all of you who are sticking with us, but we do want to talk about the upcoming Mets series Tuesday through Thursday real quick. Eduardo Rodriguez against David Peterson is the pitching matchup on Tuesday. Corbin Burnes against Kodai Senga should be a fun one on Wednesday, and then it's Zach Gallen against Clay Holmes, who apparently is a starting pitcher now, and a very good one at that. He's put up some really good numbers so far for the Mets. The Mets, Jack, have played some pretty darn good baseball this season. They are 19-9 following Sunday's action. I know they have another game on Monday, so their record will be different by the time the Diamondbacks play them. But this has been one of the best teams in all of baseball so far. And as you can see on your screen, if you're joining us on YouTube, they have a 2.53 team ERA, which ranks first in all of baseball. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, heading into play on Sunday, that was a 1.67 ERA plus. So ridiculous. Probably at least over 150. They got walked off by the Nationals on Sunday. They have essentially had the best pitching staff in baseball and a league average offense. And that's worked out pretty well for them, especially playing in their ballpark.
It'll be a challenge for the Diamondbacks, no doubt, as this gauntlet of a schedule continues for them. They've got the Mets and then the Phillies, and then they come back home to face the Mets and the Dodgers and the Giants. It's a really rough stretch that just seems to be humming along here for this Diamondbacks team. Ketel Marte, once again, we could see him in the Phillies series. That would certainly be a huge lift for this team, but he is not expected to play in this upcoming Mets series. Well, as much as we could go on for another hour and 10 minutes here, we're going to cut it off there. We very much appreciate all of you sticking with us once again. If you haven't already, be sure to drop a like on this video and a comment. We really have enjoyed interacting with all of you there. Over on the audio podcasting side, if you'd leave us a rating and review, we really appreciate that as well. Jack referenced some of his work earlier, certainly worth checking out. Everything over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. Jack and his whole crew do a great job covering the team over there, so be sure to stay dialed in on that. And over on social media, you can find us. I am at Jesse N. Friedman on X. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. Thanks again to all of you who submitted questions for this mailbag edition of the podcast. We really appreciate it. And I don't know exactly how often we'll do mailbags, but this certainly will not be the last one. We'll have another one coming up here before too long. Jack, anything else to add before we say goodbye?
I just really appreciate the questions. I thought the questions were really well thought out and really interesting topics. And I want to thank everyone again for putting those forth today.
Well, thank you again to all of you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.